Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Today, I am joined by Angela Pointon. Angela is president of 11 out of 11, a marketing agency based in the Philadelphia area with clients throughout the country. She's also author of the book, Stop Blending In, The 7 Steps for Achieving Thought Leader Status and Standing Out in Your Field. Angela and I have known each other for, I think, about 4 years. I've had the privilege to work with her and her team as a client. And I appreciate she's graciously agreed to chat with me for a few minutes today about what it's like to lead a distributed workforce, as well as some of the unique challenges and opportunities that arise for women entrepreneurs. Angela, welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Darby. It's good to be here.
All right. Well, your company is an entirely distributed workforce. I believe it's been that way from the start, correct?
It has been that way since day one, yes.
All right. Well, you were doing it before the pandemic made it a cool thing to do, right?
We were.
So you have people in many locations. So first, tell me some of the benefits of using that model and maybe why you went down that path of choosing to do that more distributed model.
Yes. So it always kind of fit my work style. I worked at other marketing agencies, and many of which had a bit of a work from home policy where you could work 1 or 2 days a week. And I always, as at the time, a mother of young children, always felt that was a huge benefit. You know, you can do a call and run laundry at the same time, or, at lunch, run to the grocery store and actually put it in the refrigerator. So I saw the work-life harmony that was a gift with that ability. And I had no desire to have an office, one for the expense, but also for the staffing challenges that get presented there. Even though I'm in Philadelphia, which is a good market for finding marketing professionals, I still felt like it was limited with forcing people to be in a certain geography in order to work for the company. So a bit of a mix between what work-life harmony worked for me and also just to expand our talent pool.
Yeah, so you've talked about some of the benefits to you as your business and personally. From your standpoint, as you have a variety of team members all over. So from your standpoint, what's been some of the benefits for them?
So we tend to attract like the perfect candidate for us, qualifications aside, is a individual who seeks flexibility and work-life harmony. And what's important to me is that it's the work-life harmony that makes sense for them. So we never tell people like you have to work this particular block of hours or you have to work this many hours a week. It's what it takes to get the job done and your life done. And so that has attracted a certain person for us. Now, the pandemic has been a bit of a gift for us too, because there are a lot of companies that don't see things the way I do and who are still trying to wedge in that fixed either hours or come into the office hybrid model, because that's how they feel comfortable, the owners for those companies.
That idea of you're working at home, but I still expect this 8 to 5 or whatever schedule, and you better be on your computer during that time.
I've even heard entrepreneurs talking about software tools that they want to install to monitor that. Yeah. And I'm like, man, if you could just let that go, and look at it differently, your life would be different and what you'd worry about would be different. So we have been given yet another gift through the pandemic, and there's been a lot of bad things for people. But one of the gifts that we've received is people kind of saying, I know now I've seen how life can be and work can be, and I know there's a better way and I want more freedom. And so we've taken on some of those people who are burnt out or just didn't want to go back to the way that things were. I don't know how long that'll last, right? It's probably a temporary gift for us, but I'm not changing things. I mean, it is this way and it's going to stay this way for the very foreseeable future.
So obviously, my big focus is around leading people and leadership. Talk to me about some of the challenges. I mean, you went down this path again before everybody was doing it. And so I'm sure you have encountered some challenges in leading a distributed workforce with communication and whatnot. So talk to me about some of those as far as leading your team.
Yes. We utilize some tools that really help us. And they're tools that a lot of companies use these days, but I feel like we use them really well. So we've looked to software and technology to replace water cooler conversation. So, software like Slack, we don't use it in the way that some companies use it, which is like a lot of animated GIFs and like, what are you wearing today? And what are you making for dinner? We use it to get work done. And another tool that we utilize is Asana, which houses all of our projects that we are working on as a marketing agency. And any communication about individual projects gets accomplished within the project in Asana. So it's stripped down email. It's allowed for very fast communication back and forth, like you feel the urge to do to walk down the hall and talk to somebody. We can do that through technology. We obviously use Zoom like a lot of companies use. And I think our team has just adopted to, if I need something to keep me moving forward, I'm either going to Slack it or put it in Asana. Worst case, I'm going to spin up a Zoom link and have a Zoom call real quick, but that's usually last. Like we don't do that very frequently unless it's a big issue or a lot of people are involved that need to discuss.
Excellent. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. You're really passionate about promoting and supporting women-owned and run businesses. I want to take a moment to let you talk about some of that passion. There are often distinct differences in the ways that men and women lead. Could you talk a little bit about that from your perspective?
Yes. Throughout my career, I have had two female leaders as mentors. One of them, I mean, it was a shame, but she was having a mental health breakdown personally when I was brought on board. It was my very first job out of college. And so that was not a great mentor experience. I was at the age where I was ready to sponge as much as I can. And I really saw a woman struggling. It was good for other reasons, but not a strong female leader from a work perspective. During college, I had an internship with a woman in Manhattan that really impressed me from the very beginning on a lot of things that I wanted to do differently with my life that we've already talked about from a work-life balance perspective. But she showed me how tough she needed to be in a lot of situations. And I took that to heart and always, she's no longer with us, but always remember Elise and what she taught me about that. Everyone else from a leadership and mentor perspective has been male in my life. And I've had some really great mentors who were male and some others who weren't so great.
We're not necessarily mentors then, right?
Well, I guess I always say, like, even to my kids,
learn from everything.
You learn from everything. And sometimes the biggest learning is how you don't want to do things in your life. And then when I talk about that, I really mean, in my case, from an emotional intelligence perspective, which we can talk about if we want. But, I think I'm not abnormal. I think there's a lot of female leaders, whether you're in a management role or business ownership role, that don't have mentors. And so you got to seek them out. And that's really what I focused on probably the last 3 years. Just finding groups that I can join, that I can bounce ideas off of. And it's not a gender versus gender thing. It's just having people around you that you can express how you feel and they can relate to the experience and provide some advice and mentorship to you.
Yeah, so you mentioned emotional intelligence. Let's talk a little bit about that. How does, I mean, in your opinion, as you think about that, how does emotional intelligence and empathy play into leadership? I mean, that's not just a female thing, that's a male and female. It's actually a very popular topic right now.
it is a popular topic, and the challenge of doing that remotely just compounds things a bit for people. I am sure I show up. I'm positive I show up in some situations with a low level of emotional intelligence. It is something that I, even as a female leader, continuously try to work on and be present with and remember the importance of. Like probably you, like many people, I've had leaders leading me who had no emotional intelligence. They wore their heart in their body language, which was often very telling of how frustrated they were feeling or annoyed they were feeling, those sorts of things that when you're leading individuals are very important to keep in check and remember about how the other person feels and how you want to show up, considering what's important in leadership. And so it's a continuous improvement item for myself. I think I'm all right at it. I think I've utilized some tools with culture development that we can even leverage from a remote perspective that help elevate that for me. But it's a challenge for everyone. I think it's about being aware that it's a challenge for you and continuing to work on it.
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned a minute ago about being able to work with people and mentors who can relate. As I told you when we talked about having this discussion, being a male myself means no matter how hard I try, I'm always going to have a blind spot. Like there are certain things that I realize I am not going to be able to adequately relate to no matter how hard I try. So speaking to both the male and the female leaders out there, tell us, what would you wish would be different for future female leaders?
Yes. So where I think we can start today, and then I'll talk about the future, where I think we can start today to do better is elevating female voices in meetings. There's even an app that you can kind of play in the background, which analyzes how many male voices are being, what's the percentage of male in a meeting versus a female's voice. We don't need the app. Unless it's like way out of balance from a number of females in the meeting to males in the meeting, if it's even or close to even, we know what the app's going to tell us, right? And so from a start today perspective, I think it's about turning to someone who, just from anatomy has a softer tone of voice and gifting some minutes in the floor to make sure that their voice is heard over more dominant voices. From a future perspective, I hope that that's just second nature for people and not really needed to be consciously thought about anymore, that it is appreciated to get all the opinions and make sure that people are contributing in the way that they want to, not keeping great ideas to themselves, not stepping up to the plate to handle something from a leadership perspective because they're not being heard, those sorts of things. My hope is that starts to get eaten away at and goes away in the future.
That made me think of the idea of unconscious competence. That's what you would like to achieve, right? You'll take conscious competence, but
right. Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. If we can get there little by little, man, that would be I think it would be a big shift in business.
Yeah, excellent. So I have just a few questions left, and I initially wrote these. I'm going to ask everybody I'm talking to these questions. I initially had the idea of like the quick fire questions that you hear sometimes. I'm not sure how quick fire these will be.
Okay.
But we'll go down that path. So first, tell me, what's the most challenging leadership situation that you've been in?
I think for me, the most challenging situation is a team member who is a great team member, but doesn't fit in their current seat, and identifying proper fit for someone that you feel has a lot of value, but isn't doing the right activities.
Yeah, that's so difficult, especially for a small company, because you don't have a lot of resources to keep somebody on if they're not working in their role. But at the same time, if they're a really great culture fit, it can be difficult. So the next question is, what have you found is the most rewarding leadership situation that you've been in?
I can't think of one particular moment. It's the little moments. I learned from somebody who was actually not a mentor of mine. It was a client of mine who ended up becoming a very close friend. I learned how she appreciated me. And her name is Brenda. And I think often, what would Brenda do? And it's the little moments of appreciation to team members and then appreciation back to me for what we're trying to build and do that make me super proud as a leader.
All right. So the big question here, because you're so amazing, what's the one piece of advice that you would offer to new leaders? Folks who are either, and I don't mean young leaders, I mean like people who are just getting into a leadership role, who are going to be taking on a team and working with individuals. It can even be people who don't have direct reports, but are leaders.
Yes, read your book, number one. After you've read Darby's book, I would seek out people who might not be right there in front of your nose. I think it's really, we've talked about this a few minutes ago. It's really important to have somebody in your life that you look up to as a leader. I think that goes for even very experienced leaders, because it always gives you pause to think about, well, what would they advise me to do? Or to ask them, hey, what do you think I should do in this situation? We all need to arm ourselves with those sorts of people. And when you're first starting out, sometimes it's hard because your network is thin, but asking others, hey, who do you think I should work with here on this particular issue? Or who do you admire is a great place to start.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Angela. I appreciate so much your willingness to talk to me today. Please tell everyone where we can find out information about your book, about your company, about other things you have going on. I want to give you an opportunity here to mention that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, for the book, if you go to Amazon and just type in Stop Blending In, you'll find the book. For me, my company website is 11out of11.com. And I'm very active on LinkedIn. So I would love if anybody's listening and you want to chat, just pop over to LinkedIn. My name is Angela Pointon. We'll connect and we'll have a chat.
All right, great. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us. Remember that my book, The Indispensable Leader, releases today. You can find it everywhere books are sold online, including Amazon and Barnes & Noble, or on my website at beindispensable.com. Order The Indispensable Leader today at beindispensable.com. And remember, don't forget to be indispensable.